So if you've seen my previous videos, you know generally there are three different types of multifamily investment opportunities. You have typically your turnkey opportunities, your light value add opportunities, or your heavier value add opportunities. Now, each different type of business strategy comes with different risk tolerance and different financial expectations. So what I thought I would do in this video is, if you're thinking about which opportunity is right for you and how do you choose the right strategy for yourself, I'm going to break each opportunity down from those perspectives, right? The risk tolerance and the financial expectations, so that you can invest in the right project for yourself. So with that, let's get at it. What's going on, guys? My name is Lior and welcome back to my channel. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of the video, two super really quick things. Number one, if this is your first time on my channel, first of all, welcome. Second of all, make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. I put out tons of new videos every single week on this channel, talking everything multifamily investing, from acquisitions to construction to financing to raising money, even sneak peeks of my own projects. So if that's the kind of content you're looking for, make sure you subscribe. So with that, let's jump right into it, right? So as I said in the intro, I'm gonna break down those three types of multifamily opportunities: the turnkey, the light value add, and the heavy value add, and talk about them from a risk tolerance and financial expectation perspective, right? So if you're an investor, right, whether you're active or passive, really pay attention, because you wanna make sure you align your financial goals with the project that you're investing in. So let's start with the most simple one, which is the turnkey investment opportunities. And as you can imagine or expect, turnkey investment opportunities are, well, pretty straightforward, right? It's typically you're buying into a project or investing into a project that there's not much to do, right? There's probably not really much construction to do. Rents are probably right at market or pretty close to it. So there's not a lot of stabilization that needs to happen. So on the risk profile perspective, if you're looking for something pretty minimal risk, without a ton of construction risk or construction timeline execution risk, right? That's the perfect kind of project to invest in, right? Because everything's already smoothly operating. It's not like, whether you're the operator or you're investing with someone, it's not like they didn't need to go in and turn things over and renegotiate rents everywhere, right? It's all should be basically ready to go. In terms of the risk profile, it's pretty low. Now, obviously from a financial perspective, as you can imagine, because your risk profile is pretty low, it's not like you're typically making huge returns on these turnkey investments, right? I mean, you're typically paying pretty close to market value because everything's already ready to go. Boom, you don't need to do much. So, in terms of equity creation, typically you don't get a ton of it. You will probably get some cash flows. Now, in terms of distributions of cash flows, right, that's one important thing, especially if you're a passive investor. On these projects, typically cash flow distributions will start from day one, right? Because, there's already top line income coming in. It's not like the operator or the lead person needs to stabilize or renegotiate rents, right? So the property's already generating income. That means more than likely the property can start paying off distributions to the investors from day one. So if that's important to you and you want to see those checks come in from day one, that would be a good kind of opportunity to come in at. But again, your upside is typically more limited. Now, the second type of opportunity you could potentially invest in is the light value add opportunity. Now, with light value add, you're typically looking, as the name would suggest, light turnovers, right? You're not doing anything crazy with the units, but usually with light value add projects, you need to go and make small updates, right? Whether it's like some paint, some floors, some hardware, some fixtures, maybe new appliance packages, right? You're not going in and tearing walls apart and doing new plumbing or new electrical, right? It's just boom, little minor stuff, quick turnovers. In these kinds of opportunities, typically most rents are relatively close to market, maybe 10 to 20% below, but not much more than that. And again, it might be up to the operator to just renegotiate or turn over some units in order to hit peak rental income. So as you can imagine from a risk profile, it is a little riskier than a turnkey opportunity, right? Because there is some stabilization work involved, but in the grand scheme of things on construction, especially with construction, it's not that much that could probably go wrong, right? I mean, again, anything can happen, but when you're just doing fixtures, appliances, floors, paint, it's unlikely that major things are going to go catastrophically wrong, right? It's just, there's not a lot of room for that to happen. So on the risk profile, it's still pretty low. Now, in terms of financial expectations, in terms of upside, usually there is a decent amount of upside, right? Because when you're buying light value add properties, you're typically buying them at pretty good pricing since they're not fully optimally performing, right? So you can go in, or the operator can go in, make those improvements, and capture some equity upside, which is really nice. Now, in terms of cash flow distributions, again, especially as a passive investor, you know, these projects can sometimes start paying off distributions from day one, but depending on the amount of value add and the amount of stabilization work that needs to be done, there is potential room that it might take 3, 6, 9 months for the project to get fully stabilized, and then there'd be enough cash flow coming from the property to pay all the investors their distributions, right? And I should make the note, right? If you're a passive investor, and even if there's a preferred return on the deal, right, this would be the time where you would see, you know what, the first 3, 6 months, there's no prefs paid out because there's no distributions. But once you quickly stabilize the project within a handful of months, that again, that's when there'll be enough cash flow coming from the property and distributions start to be made. So again, no hard rule, right? Just it's a deal by deal. Some projects could start paying from day one. Some may start paying a little bit later. Just depends on the amount of work that needs to be done. And finally, the last type of business strategy that I thought I would highlight on there is the heavier value add. Now, as you probably expect from the flow of the video, this is the most intense one, right? Because with heavier value add deals, there is typically quite a bit of construction to be done, right? You know, heavier value add deals can include anything from full gut rehabs of the unit. It could include guts of kitchens, guts of baths. You're probably doing some mechanical work, right? You're probably doing some new plumbing, some new electrical. Maybe you're opening up walls. You know, this can be quite intensive in terms of construction. So, you know, on the risk profile perspective, we're certainly taking a step up, right? Because now we're dealing with heavier construction. There's more room for error. There's more room for change orders. There's more room for time delays. You know, because the more construction there is, you know, if you've ever done a project or even if you renovated your own home, you know that nothing goes perfectly, right? It's almost impossible. There's bound to be something that comes up. So on the risk profile, we're certainly taking a step up with the heavier value add projects. But in terms of financial expectations, here's kind of the trade-off. First of all, your equity upside tends to be quite a bit higher, right? Because on these heavier value add deals, you're typically buying at really attractive pricing, you know, because there's a lot of work to be done. And once you implement and execute the work, there should be quite a bit of equity upside for you, right? So if that's kind of what's driving you and that's kind of what you're looking from an investment perspective, that should be a type of deal you look at. And then from a financial, you know, from a cash flows and distributions perspective, you know, heavier value adds, I would say typically don't pay out distributions or press until it's fully stabilized. Now that can take anywhere from 9 to 12 to even 18 months. Just again, depends on the scope and how much work needs to be done. You know, I've certainly done my fair share of heavy value add deals. I can tell you as an operator, yeah, usually it takes about 9 to 12 months before you start paying out a preferred return, right? Or making any sort of distributions to your investors. So, you know, if you're gonna be a limited partner and invest in a deal like that, just make sure you understand the true consequences of that. Make sure you're comfortable with the risks. You also wanna be evaluating how much upside there is to be gained for taking on that risk. So hopefully that's helpful, guys. Hopefully that kind of breaks down the different strategies that you guys can invest in or implement in. Of course, if you have any sort of questions, make sure to put them in the comments below, and I will definitely help you out.